Hey guys, welcome to the Massive Iron channel. I'm Steve Shaw, Massive Iron Live. Massive Iron Live. I'm here with Robert Shinetsky, the supplement engineer. And usually we're on about 2 hours, but with the 4th of July weekend, I'm not sure. Robert, you must not be out in public. You're not wearing your mask in Texas?
Nope, and the governor can go suck a big old fat one with
Big
that
fat
order.
cigar. Yep, big fat cigar.
Big fat something. Let's trounce on people's personal freedoms and liberties and everything on the day before Independence Day.
All right,
awfully
Robert's all political right out of the gate here. Right out of the gate. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Let me know who's here, where everybody's from. If they're doing anything special this weekend, we got the big July 4th weekend in the United States. It should be a real interesting weekend in many, many ways.
Yep.
The country's been bottled up for a while, and it's about to explode. And at the same time, they're starting to mandate masks and try to close everything down again. So we'll see. Robert, you guys doing anything fun this weekend?
Well, we were supposed to. So last weekend, we kind of had a belated birthday party for our daughter who turned 3 2 weeks ago, but she turned 3 on the exact same day as Father's Day. So we knew that people that we would be inviting over were probably having plans, since many of them are fathers as well. So we did that last weekend. This weekend, we're probably going to head out to our local distillery that we like here, Iron Wolf Distillery. They make a fabulous bourbon, and they also do a couple of other liquors there on site. They do a vodka that's infused with horseradish, a black pepper bourbon. Yeah, it's really good if you like to make Bloody Marys. So, and they're over in Burnett County, which is kind of like a safe haven outside of the nonsense that's in Travis County here. So, but with the statewide mandates that the governor has descended upon the people, we're going to see we're going to do a test run this afternoon. And if it all goes well, then we'll go out there tomorrow afternoon as well. If not, we're just going to be grilling a whole bunch of stuff here.
Sounds good. Guys, thanks for tuning in. I want you to post up your questions. Get them in. Diet training, nutrition, supplementation, off topic, anything. Please post your questions. We'll be here as long as you have questions. If we do not see your questions, please repost them. You won't offend us if you repost them. YouTube is a little bit crazy every time we do a live video and we miss questions. All right, a couple of things. If you check out the link down below, I started a service called the Workout of the Month. And I got a link to that down below. You don't have to do the workout of the month, but if you do the service, you save like $3 per workout. It is available as a standalone. I put together, and I've been very unsatisfied with my 5x5 alternatives because there's a certain niche out there that loves the starting strength, strong lift types of workouts. And if you like these types of workouts, I put together something down below. It's a 28-day cycle that is kind of like strong lift, starting strength on steroids with a little bit of periodization. I'm very proud of how this workout came out, so check it out down below. And one other thing, I have Sean Clarita, IFBB Pro. Sean Clarita, I've been friends with him, I wouldn't say friends. I've known him for a very long time. I interviewed him yesterday. We'll be talking hypertrophy, straight muscle building. That will be out tomorrow morning. Sean will be in the 212 Mr. Olympia this year, and he looks freaking phenomenal. All right, let's get rolling and see what we got here.
Damn, Steve, that's kind of a hard act to follow up. Now I feel like the kind of the worthless guy. You got big boy Clarita coming on tomorrow, man. That's
hey,
awesome.
You're the expert. You're the supplement expert. I'm just a guy that likes to lift heavy. So yeah. Tom McGovern says, yo, Tom, let us know where you guys are from. Stan, hello from Norway. Can't wait for the movie 96 Hours. Stan's a client of mine. I appreciate being able to help you. He's been sick for a while. And anybody curious about 96 Hours, I have a link down below. We've poured 16 months into this documentary and 16 months into running 10 hours a day. And we are ramping up for a 100-mile attempt in November. So we need people to back it. We've spent a fortune on it already. And basically by backing the film, there's a lot of perks you get. And we have a film crew from the United Kingdom that's coming over in November to film it. We're going to be submitting to film festivals. This isn't going to be some bullshit documentary. This is going to be the real deal, a big scale documentary. We have a full soundtrack. So if you guys can check out the link below, if you can donate at least $10, I'd appreciate it. Tom McGovern says, what's it about? 96 hours is basically the premise is, can me and my wife as a couple go from couch to 100-mile runners in about a year? It's supposed to be in a year, but with the COVID lockdown, it completely threw us off because our run was supposed to be in May. So that's kind of the premise. Let's see. Stan says, it's Steve's movie, a documentary. Seriously? Yep, seriously. We have 1,000 hours of footage. You have no idea how much footage we have. Multiple countries, multiple states, all that kind of good stuff. Neo is a client of mine. How's it going, Neo? Neo turns 50 on Monday and is looking amazing. Sexier than I am, that's for sure. Whoops. What's going on, Slim? And Tom is tuning in from Cleveland. Joseph is a new client of mine. How's it going, Joseph?
What's up, man?
Hope you guys have a good weekend. Let's see. Arnav, do you think gyms can be made safe? Well, I think all the healthy people are generally at gyms. You know, the immunocompromised, not to kind of diminish the question, but the immunocompromised generally don't go to gyms. That doesn't mean people that go to gyms don't have contact with the immunocompromised, but I think gyms are more safe than a grocery store. What do you think, Robert?
I mean, yeah, gyms are safe. Can you make everything 100% sterilized and free of any kind of bacteria, germs, or everything? No, and you wouldn't want to, because if we were that frazzled to where every little microbe that we encountered sabotaged our bodies, then we would have been extinct a long time ago. So you want to be exposed to certain antigens and whatnot. And gyms are a perfectly fine place. Just don't have your spotter spitting into your mouth or something, or sweating into your eyeballs while you're trying to lift, and you'll be fine.
Well, you know, the COVID, the masks, the safety aside, you know, I watch my feed, and a lot of fitness people follow me on Facebook, and Facebook more than anything, you can kind of get a vibe on what is going on. And I saw, you know, another gym going bankrupt today, another gym going closing yesterday. And, you know, safe. Gyms are going to be, you know, a lot of gyms are going to be dead, like a lot of breweries. So
Yep.
Regardless of what you feel about COVID, we need to find some solutions right now so we can keep some businesses open and not drive half the population into poverty. Let's see. Pennsylvania here, the masks, I will not wear them.
Agreed, Slim.
All I got to say is if they come to Ohio and say you got to mandate masks in public, and I'm out on the trail, I'm not going to be wearing a mask on the trail. No way. I have bad asthma issues to begin with. No way I'm going to be running with a mask on my face. Let's see. Tom McGivern, Stenabolic SR909, not necessarily a SARM. I know this is a drug-free channel, but I'd like to hear his thoughts. I thought that was a made-up name at first. Stenabolic SR9009.
No, it's an actual compound. It is SARM-like in its effects on the body. Some of it's been used for circadian rhythm research, but it's also been shown to improve longevity and exercise performance. All of these are in mice. It is banned by WADA. It is a research chemical. It's classified as a research chemical. There are no studies or no extensive body of research done in humans. So as with all of these SARMs or SARMs-like compounds, research peptides, I'm going to wait till we've got more human data before I start really injecting stuff into me.
I guess the question for me, Robert, is SARMs are such a hot topic. And I honestly, you know, I hate to be dismissive of them, but here's the thing. And I want people to understand where I'm coming from when it comes to SARMs. When you take an anabolic, you have to remain on it to see benefits, right? If not, you get off and you do the shrinky dink, right? And I've been with Mr. Olympias that were not on their same protocols. I mean, I've trained with Ronnie Coleman. I've met Jay Cutler when I was at Muscle and Strength. They were not the same size. You shrink, right? So with SARMs, the question is, when you run these things, Do they provide lasting size? Do they provide super physiological, stretching of the limits of your natural limits, or do you have to stay on these things to see any benefit at all? That's the question for me.
Right. And we don't have that data at the point, especially in humans. I mean, we know what testosterone and tren and some of these other, steroids do, the anabolics do, but with these SARMs, they are so new and we barely know what they're doing in mice, let alone in humans. The other thing is quality, sourcing quality. Unless you know a compound pharmacist or you live relatively close to a compound pharmacy and they're willing to sell you these research peptides, you've got about that big of a chance of actually getting in the bottle what you're paying for. There's such a mass blowover on all of these things. Like they're selling you poor quality ingredients. It's not the actual compound that you're buying in there, especially with these orals that they have. So and for the average person, I mean, if you are a top level IFBB pro that is trying to eke out every last bit of muscle and shred every last ounce of fat from your frame, and you're competing at the top tier, I completely understand maybe wanting to investigate these compounds. But for the average person, the average, weekend warrior, a person like you or me, Steve, that just loves to lift and, make the most of what we can with our genetic potentials, these compounds, it's not even worth dabbling for most people.
I'm going to be honest. Most people don't train hard enough to get any benefit out of them at all.
Right.
None at all. And that's the reality. And I'm sorry if that offends anybody, but that's the truth. Most people will get no benefit out of it. And, talking about the quality, even in the black market steroid realm, and I've been around the block enough. I've had everybody in my office. I've talked to everybody. I'm educated to a reasonable degree on some of this stuff, and I know how people procure things, etc. At least in the black market realm, you can get stuff from major labs overseas.
Yep.
A major lab, like it would be a major lab in the U.S., and the quality is not crap, right, to a reasonable degree. You don't have that with SARMs. You're taking some crap that you don't know the quality control standards, and you're hoping to get like a half pound of muscle gains from that stuff for whatever the cost is. I think, in my opinion, SARMs and anybody that pushes SARMs like clown bags like Kenny KO are a fucking joke. Because there's no scientific backing, there's no quality control standards, and they're just reckless idiots. And you can quote me and you can tell them because they are, and they can't defend it. All right. Neil, why are the strong dudes out of Ohio? That's a very, very good question. We have Elite FTS. We have West Side. What's the strongest woman the woman that was the strongest woman in the world? Laura Phelps Sweat. She is trained at Tiger Fitness Gym. I've done work with her. We are the strongest state. I don't know. I simply don't know.
Something in the water there. John Meadows is up there too. I mean, I know he's trained with Elite FTS and stuff, but I mean, yeah, he's an Ohio native. He's a rather strong individual.
It's funny you mention that because I was just thinking this morning about doing a flashback Friday. A few years ago, Terry Bryan, who used to train at West Side, big guy, right? He sends me a message on Saturday morning. He says, I'm holding a competition at the gym, a deadlift competition. Whoever lifts the most compared to body weight gets like $500. And I'm sick as a dog, right? But I go down there anyway, and 500 is 500, right? I'm going to do this. And I ended up tying him. We both did like 820 lockouts after like 3-inch blocks with chains or something ridiculous. It was turned into a circus act, but I split the money, and that was a good day. So anyway, you mentioned West Side. I just recall that story. Neo, thank you so much. Thank you kindly for the donation. I appreciate it. Stephen Del Moro, is 96 hours going to be strictly about running? That's a very good question. If you go on Netflix or Amazon, there's a lot of really mediocre running documentaries. This is going to be a little bit, it's bigger than just about running. We're trying to tell a story about personal transformation. Both my wife and I lost 100 pounds. there's a lot of really personal stuff in here. My father was a very abusive alcoholic. My ex-wife was violently beaten by her ex-husband. So there's a lot of personal transformation and a lot of really deep thoughts, and really focus on what the fuck are we doing in this life. That's kind of the bigger picture. Like, what the fuck are we waiting for? Let's go out and do something amazing. So it's not just about running. It's so much more than just about running. And we have an amazing soundtrack to go with it. So it's going to be more cinematic and almost play more like a movie than a boring documentary. Slim 56, I jumped on the Indiegogo for 25. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. We got a big road ahead of us, and we need like $25,000 just to get this thing produced, legal costs, and all this kind of stuff. So, all right, keep your questions coming, guys. Post up your questions. We want anything and everything. Alan B. Tigner Jr. Greetings. I read that the body can only process 20 to 25 grams every 4 hours or so. Robert, let it rip.
No, that is one of the biggest. I always wonder how in the world this myth got started. But no, your body can process a lot more than 25 grams every 4 hours. Go ahead, Steve.
Somewhere in the 80s, I'll guarantee it.
Yeah, I mean, there's some research showing that that muscle protein synthesis is maximized when you have between like 30 to 40 grams of protein, but that doesn't mean that's the limit on what your body can process or handle. So I'm dying to find out. I wish I could find out the origins of this myth, but no, you can have. I mean, there's people that do intermittent fasting, or they do the warrior diet where they just consume 1 or 2 meals a day, and they're still building muscle. They're still making gains. They're not, shriveling up and suffering from muscle wasting diseases.
I wrote an article about this, and it's over at Tiger Fitness, and Robert can correct any of my bad science. Robert is the science filter. But basically, the stomach turns all that stuff you eat into something called chyme. I believe it's pronounced chyme, right? Mm-hmm. And that goes in the intestines. And the body will slow or speed digestion of the micro and macronutrients based on what is going on in your body. So if you have an excess of protein in this chyme and you don't really need it right now, the body might slow digestion a little bit. But the body's very efficient at using this. I believe the body will use over 90% of the protein that you consume, at least 90%, somewhere around 90% of the protein that you consume. So the idea that the human body is so fragile and can only handle things in these little chunks is ridiculous. If the human body was as fragile, we would never have made it out of the Stone Age.
Exactly.
It's not. And people who say stuff like this are ignorant. The sources of this, things like this, people are ignorant. They lack fundamental logic skills, and they really need to go back to school. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and then Alvin, also for double scooping protein powder, I would say the average individual probably doesn't need to scoop it. I mean, you can if you enjoy eating a lot of protein powder, you can, but it's usually based on a body weight ratio. So, anywhere like 25 to 40 grams of protein per meal is more than enough to cover your bases.
Yeah, I get kind of slack, Alvin. I won't lie. I mean, I get kind of slack with my protein intake, and occasionally, like once a week, I'll double scoop because, I've never been the best. I don't really micromanage my macronutrients, but my wife and I have been training pretty hard again lately in the weight room. And I'm on limited calories right now because I'm trying to get my weight down as much as possible for my big run. And sometimes I double scoop just to get my protein in, but no problem with that. You just have to slam it like you're in a beer drinking contest. Jay Garcia, folks think that all of us breathe and sweat on top of each other at the gym. Honestly, man, when I'm at the gym, I'm more worried about touching my eye and getting iron fillings and shavings in my eye than anything. But that's just me. Robert, what's your biggest concern when you're training at a commercial gym?
Not getting distracted by the fuckery of other people. Just,
Right.
I mean, you see somebody just asinine things, and it's a good thing that they're out there, they're doing something physical, they're moving. So that's a very good thing. But, I'll see sometimes people working with personal trainers and they've got them doing, balance drills on a Bosu ball. I'm just trying to think, or you just, the stuff that you hear other people say or what they've read on like a nutrition website or a fitness website, they said, oh, I got to do this to, break the anabolic window, or I got to constantly keep my body guessing. I'm just thinking, man, I got into this industry to help kind of break these myths apart. It's like 5 years later, it still feels like we're still climbing uphill.
Yeah, this industry, not to be dismissive of your comment, Jay, but yeah, I'm not worried about sweat and other people's germs. I'm simply not. That's just my opinion. And
no, I never have been.
Everybody's different, and some of us are more immunocompromised than others, and I get that. But like we have, some days it seems like we never advance in the fitness industry. You see trainers using resistance training as a means for a client to burn calories. I'm like, come on now.
Right.
I mean, resistance training has a function, and it's not to burn calories. You do not try to perform endless reps of resistance training to burn calories. Just go walk up a hill or something. It's much easier.
Yeah, most people at the gym are respectful of distances anyway. We're not all hovering. It's like Jay said, we're not all hovering on top of each other, sweating into each other's mouths or breathing on each other. It's not like that at all. Somebody will be on a leg press, somebody will be on the Smith machine, somebody will be on the squat rack, somebody's on the, all the benches are taken up because everybody's got a bench. And it looks like Jay is some kind of law enforcement or first responder. So thank you for your service too, Jay.
Yeah, it's definitely not a good time to be a servant of the state or your local community. But I appreciate anybody out there. These guys have to go through a world of hell, and I wouldn't want to do their job. I would not want to do their job. So I sincerely appreciate what they do. Tom, okay, question: bringing up a small muscle group like delts or calves. Frequency or up the weight? Frequency or up the weight? Well, first off, delts are not a small muscle group. They are just as much a major muscle group as the chest. The back and the quads are probably the biggest muscle groups, and Robert can correct me if he feels my assessment is wrong. But delts have to be trained with the equal attack as chest. So with calves are very unique. The biggest thing I say about calves when people tell me, hey, my calves aren't growing, is do you attack progression and consistency in your calves like you do your bench press? And I guarantee you do not. So that is the baseline. Delts have a lot of potential to get strong. Military presses and dumbbell overhead presses, most people are nowhere near the strength levels they need to be, and those you need to focus on getting strong. Robert, do you have any thoughts on calves training?
It's kind of like the same with every other muscle group. Hit it hard, use a variety of rep ranges. Make sure you're using good technique, especially with calves. A lot of people tend to know if they're bouncing, they're going to bounce off and get some of that elastic motion in there in the rebound of it, and the Achilles will end up taking over more of it than the actual calf muscles. The gastroc and the soleus actually doing stuff. So there's the calves predominantly have slow twitch fibers, so they are going to be more prone to higher rep training and exhaustive stuff, but it still works to get in, some 8 to 12 rep work in there. I guess maybe when he's talking about the small muscle group, maybe he's talking about the side delt and the rear delts, which again, those are, respond typically, or at least in my case, they respond better to higher rep stuff. And since they're such a smaller muscle group, they tend to recover a little bit quicker than some like a bigger muscle group like the back or chest or quads probably. So you can probably hit them more frequently. But the intensity with which you're attacking those muscles on a given day is going to dictate how frequently you can train them again. So can you do them every day? I mean, if you're only doing like a set or two, but 2 to 3 times a week for something like side delts, rear delts, or calves, that's not uncommon.
Yeah, I mean, things you have to look at the exercises you're attacking these muscle groups with. So right. Rear delts, you're looking at isolation style exercises. Isolation style exercises inherently don't have a lot of room for progressive overload. So at the end of the day, like if I have to do face pulls for 3 sets of 8 to 12, I'm pretty bored with that. That's one of the reasons why I like to do block training, or like what I call 50s, just trying to get to 50 reps.
Yeah.
Because let's say you're doing a 2-minute block set of face pulls. You can add a rep over last time, right? That's sheer will. That's sheer determination. You can progress a lot easier using the block style training than anything. So that's one of the reasons why I like block style or rest pause training for isolation style exercises, because it's so tedious and so difficult to add weight. Robert, what are you eating?
Quite possibly the nastiest protein bar ever.
Oh,
Gatorade whey protein.
How did that enter your house?
This so there is a supplement deal site that I highly recommend for anybody that's looking to like save on protein bars, fitness equipment, supplements that go on sale every now and then. Fitnessdealnews.com. And so they had a box of 12 protein bars for $8. And so anytime I see a protein bar for like less than $1 a serving, what's $8? That's fine. So the macros on this aren't terrible. 23 grams of carbs, 20 grams of protein, 7 grams of fat. It's made with whey protein and almond butter. The only sweeteners in here, I think, are stevia. Not that I really care about that. I'm fine with Ace K and all that other stuff. But it's really not good. If you ever tried if anybody tried the DPI Best protein bars, the texture on these is terrible. So I'm just trying to finish them up and eat them out. And we've got leg day whenever we hop off of this. So I'm making sure I've got enough fuel in me to not die.
I'm curious, and I'm going to ask this to anybody that's watching. I do the same thing when I'm rolling through Kroger. If I see a protein bar that's on sale, like Kroger will have crazy deals on stuff. I don't care if it's like a chocolate-covered turd. I'll buy some and I'll eat them. Because I like to have protein bars for hikes and stuff like that. So I'm curious, do you guys do the same thing, or would you rather pay more for something quality? And a funny little story, the GNC in town is closing up. I don't know. Well, the bankruptcy. What I saw, Bruce Neller, who was with Giant Sports. He tags me in a lot of stuff on Facebook, and I see GNC is filing for is it bankruptcy or
Chapter 11. But what I think is that they're just doing that for financial reasons and to restructure some things. They're going to end up closing a few brick and mortar stores, but the GNC name still carries a huge weight in the industry. So somebody will come in, they'll get another buyer.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that. When people talk about a company going bankrupt, I remember a restaurant in town when I was young that used to file bankruptcy every year, and they'd come in and reopen as a new restaurant. And I think they did that it seemed like forever.
Wow.
Scott McErlean, in the UK, the bars and restaurants are opening soon. We have to wear masks in enclosed public spaces. Anyone able to inhale a steak through a mask? Yeah, I find that incredibly not well thought out. Let's just leave it at that.
No, the restaurants here, they're making people wear them to the table, and then anytime they get up to go to the bathroom, you have to put it back on. I haven't been to a restaurant since March. I'm probably not going to be going back anytime soon.
The only thing I'll say is I'm not against caution, but I am definitely pro common sense. And most of the stuff we are doing doesn't make any sense at all.
No.
So it might make us feel good, but I don't think it's well thought out. Our leaders didn't think it out. Our leaders didn't consult with the proper people. And, nail me to the wall if you think I'm wrong. Nigel Helmer, nothing safe about the gym. Just by going to one, you put yourself in danger of creating a better you. Stay healthy, my friends. I don't know, man. People at the gym are usually pretty healthy. So that's all I can really say about that. Slim, is there any real difference in brand and quality in regards to protein supplements as far as how it builds muscle? Taste is obviously different. Well, Slim, I got to tell you, I'm just going to lead with a story, and I'll let Robert fill in the gaps here. Muscle gauge nutrition, okay? And I'm not even sure if I can say this, but back in the day, I used to take Muscle Gauge Nutrition protein powder, and it tasted amazing. And later, we came to find out that it only had like 15 or 14 grams of protein per scoop, and nowhere near what they were supposed to have. So, the smaller companies, without any real testing, I don't use their protein powder, even if it tastes like if it's cheap and tastes like a can of ass, you still don't know what you're getting.
Correct. Yeah, their flavor is a big wild card in the industry these days. But like Steve said, what Steve was describing was the amino spiking cases, and Muscle Farm got busted for this several years back, and so did a bunch of other companies. Basically, they were using very cheap forms of whey protein concentrate. So whey protein concentrate can vary anywhere between 35 to 80% protein by mass. So if you take 100 grams of protein and you get WPC 35, that's only going to have 35 grams of protein. The other 65 grams are going to be a mix of lactose, carbohydrates, and fat, milk fats. So yeah, quality definitely does matter when we're talking about that. And so from a consumer standpoint, if you're going to go and pay $50 for a 2-pound tub of protein, or a 5-pound tub of protein, don't you want to get as much protein as possible for your dollar? To where you should be looking for, the company should be listing out WPC 80, so that's the highest quality whey protein concentrate you can get. So that's going to be 80% protein by mass. You can also look for a whey protein isolate, which is going to be minimum 90% protein under law. Hydrolyzed whey protein, I don't think most people need to even bother with it. It's overly processed, it tastes like shit, and it is very expensive. In regards to protein supplements in general and their ability to build muscle, if you're consuming enough protein from beef, chicken, pork, fish, lamb testicles, whatever, then no, the amount of muscle building you're going to get isn't going to be any different than what you would get from whey protein, casein protein, egg white protein, or anything like that. But when it comes to actually purchasing a protein powder supplement, look for what the label says. Look if the company tells you, are they actually using WPC 80? Are they using whey protein isolate? Look for WPC 80. Don't really go for anything less. And if they don't want to tell you and the company doesn't tell you, if they just say, trust us, go find another company. Send me a message. I'll give you a laundry list of reputable companies that do some really good protein powders.
Speaking of which, Robert can be found on Instagram at the Supplement Engineer. If you have a question for him, slide in his DM. Robert runs a podcast called The Supplement Engineer. You can also find him on YouTube at The Supplement Engineer. And over at my website, which is right above my head, Super Living Today, Robert has a supplement assessment service, and a lot of you have been taking advantage of that service. Basically, if you want to save money and get the best bang for your buck with your supplement plan, Robert will give you the no bullshit, straight solution to what you're trying to achieve. He'll tell you what to spend your money on, what you probably shouldn't spend your money on, etc. So if you want help and you want to refine your supplement dollar, head over to superlivingtoday.com and check out the services. There is a supplement assessment service from Robert. Slim, I know several guys at work say they take SARMs. The thing I noticed is, at least after a year, they look no different. Not one. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, that's really the thing. It goes back to the reality that most people don't train hard enough for any of this stuff to matter. The knee-jerk reaction when you see people on social media that have a lot of muscle is drugs. But look, I got a client, Broken Bars. The dude is fucking jacked, and I talk to him every day, and his arms are bigger than mine. They're like 17 and a half. He's like 207 pounds, and the dude couldn't be cleaner, right? He looks amazing, just absolutely amazing. When I first met Alan Roberts, me and Alan Roberts were kind of the same size, same strength. And, even people accuse Alan. The guys that lift a lot of weight, that put in a reasonable amount of volume, that kill it, those are the guys that get the real results. And they don't need stuff like this. If you want to try to take a shortcut, go ahead and spend your money on this stuff, but don't expect more than like a quarter pound of muscle, right? No one can tell because, quite honestly, you're not training hard enough for it to matter, and your diet is shit. So I say this with love. Clean up your diet and get a lot stronger than you are now, and forget about this shit and tell Kenny KO to go fuck himself. All right. Excuse my my angst and me being fired up today, but I really, really dislike people like that push this stuff. So Kenny KO can go fuck himself. Tom McGovern, Ohio is strong because it is in the heartland. I don't know what's in the water in Ohio. I really don't. But Columbus, we got the Arnold Sports Festival. Robert, are you planning on coming next year?
If they decide to have it, yeah, I'll be there. And any excuse I get to come up to Ohio and see you, Steve, I'll make that excuse for.
Well, yeah, we got a chance to actually drink this year, and
banter.
Me and my wife are actually looking at having a booth for Massive Iron.
Cool.
A small one, and for our movie 96 Hours. So if we do, we might just try to pull Robert in and have the supplement engineer over there as well. So
let's do that. If you need somebody working the booth, I'll be there in a heartbeat.
We're strongly thinking about it. I think the lowest cost space is pretty reasonable, so we're trying to budget for that.
Well, they should give everybody a free discount after what the bullshit they pulled this past year, where they decided not to refund all the vendors and stuff.
Right, and this begs the question. I picked on Kenny KO twice in this live video about SARMs. Does he still push SARMs? If anybody knows, let me know, because I really don't watch his channel anymore. I assume he's still on the SARMs train, so somebody can let me know. Been on adventures. Hey, Friday crew, I did AMRAP on dumbbell bench, 75 by 21. You know what, Ben? You're a man after my heart. That's sweet romance.
Impressive. It's impressive.
Yeah, I love rep work on dumbbells. I don't know why. I just love rep work on dumbbells. All right, Paul DeVito, Danny's brother. I'm so glad this is a drug-free channel, Massive Iron Rules. Thank you, Paul, and sorry for my bad joke. I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, back when I ran Muscle and Brawn for him, and I think that started in 2007, 2008, we always kept the drugs out of it, right? I mean, anything I'm involved with is going to be about lifting. It's going to be about health. It's going to be about fitness. It's going to be about taking care of yourself. And it's going to have a respect for the iron, okay? Anybody that moves iron or, spends any time mastering form or working on form, it takes lifting seriously. That's respect for the iron, and we have to respect the lifter. And look, if bodybuilding is what it is, right? And top level powerlifting might be equal, if not more Wild West. I think at least the top level bodybuilders have coaches that guide them with their chemical soup, right? But powerlifting, man, the stuff I've seen from top level powerlifters, that's like, I don't think they have coaches. I just think it's kind of like the Wild West when it comes to chemicals. So I just don't like letting any of that stuff in the door. It's just a waste of time. Yeah. And, I'll say this, like Greg Doucette, right? I was talking to somebody about Greg Doucette, and, when Greg Doucette went after Athlete X saying no one can stay that year around without being on TRT, I had to laugh because TRT does not make you lean and does not keep you lean. Okay. And Greg Doucette, of anybody, should know this. I mean, the guy ratted out a whole lab to get out of going to prison. He had $100,000 in performance enhancing drugs. Doucette's not an idiot. So for him to throw Athlete X under the bus and say he's on TRT to stay lean, I mean, come on, Greg. You can ask 20 different people on a steroid forum what cycle they need to stay lean, and they'll all give you different answers. Legitimately, they'll give you different answers. It's a clusterfuck of clusterfuckery, let me tell you. So just know that. And when you hear somebody like Greg Doucette saying he's on TRT, that's how he stays lean year round, no, that's complete bullshit. So that's all I got to say. All right, Joseph Turnage. Does it matter if you lift heavy with less reps or light with more reps? Joseph, this is it's hard to answer this without going into a lot of detail. Progressive overload is key. When you're dealing with your compound movements, for the average lifter, low reps don't need it, okay? The average lifter does not need it. Keep your compound movements basically between 5 to 12 reps, with the exception of deadlifts. I don't really like higher rep sets on deadlifts. I'd rather have you doing more sets on deadlifts with a little bit lower rep range, but you need to have progression in the mix. On non-compound movements, obviously you're going to be using lighter weight and a little bit more reps to make up for the fact that you don't really have a big progression window or progression opportunity with lighter reps. But everything comes back to progressive overload and balance. Heavy weight with very low reps isn't really going to benefit anybody until they get to the late intermediate stage and they're pushing for more and more, the most possible strength. Robert, do you have any thoughts on that?
You pretty much nailed everything I was going to say, Steve. Like you said, heavy compound movements, go with the lighter, lower reps, higher weight. Isolation movements, you can venture into the higher rep territory. In general, though, get work in all the rep ranges. Work in some, like Steve said, 5 to 12 reps, 12 to 15. Even goes high as like 15 to 25 on some of like the some of the isolation stuff, like face pulls, rear delt flies, side laterals, even curls, push downs. You can go high and get some metabolic stress in there. Push ups, you can do higher rep things with that. Basically, gauge the rep range that you're working with to the exercise. Certain exercises are going to lend themselves better to lower rep ranges. Some exercises are going to work themselves better to higher rep ranges. I don't really want to do a 15 or 20 rep set of squats. Let's keep that in like the 6 to 10 rep range. Same thing with deadlifts. I don't want to do 20 rep set of deadlifts.
Right. Joseph, the best way to describe it is you go into the gym and you do the hard work first. You do compounds for a reasonable rep range. And then your energy, your mental focus, they're down a little bit on the scale. So you're going to use the next best exercise you can at that point. And usually for most people, you start with the compounds in a reasonable rep range. Let's say 6 to 10 reps, 6 to 8 reps, whatever. And you transition from, I don't know, I'm not even sure if you can get this in here. Where am I at? I'm backwards. You transition from compound movements to isolation movements. And generally, you're transitioning from a little bit lower reps into a little bit higher reps. Like, I don't like to do super high reps, but for isolation movements, generally 12 is about my max before I really lose interest. So, Chris, boom. Shades of Mark Lobliner. What's up, guys? Whoops, I almost accidentally reported him or put him in a timeout.
Chris is awesome. He always shows up on the lives that Sandy and I do on Wednesdays and chimes in on the supplement reviews and whatnot that we do. So he's been a supporter of mine for a long time. I'm not sure if you've seen him a lot on your channel or not, Steve, but he's awesome.
No, well, I've seen the name. I'm just trying to read his shirt. I think it's a Muscle Tech shirt. So I was trying to check out the best of the best. I was just trying to check out.
Yeah, it is a Muscle Tech shirt. Good eye.
Good eye. DL, when are you going to try plant-based eating? I am more plant strong than probably any carnivore So, am I going to go all vegan? Never, absolutely not, unless all the animals on Earth die.
Well, then I'll just eat people. We'll do that.
Look, a lot of my good friends are vegans. A lot of my runner friends are vegans. One of my good friends, David Clark, that passed away recently, was a vegan. I respect them. I understand the ethics. I understand why they do the things they do, but I am not going to do it ever. So it's just a personal choice, and I do not hate vegans. I respect anybody that makes a conscious decision to clean up their diet, but it's never going to happen for me.
Yeah, I would. One other thing I would say is that the plant-based eating thing. I mean, I eat a plant-based diet. I don't eat a plant-only diet. There's a huge distinction between the two. I mean, my meals, if you look at my plate, over 75% of the plate is plant foods, and then you've got one portion that is animal protein. The rest of it is some kind of whole grain or some kind of non-starchy vegetable or something like that. So I think we need to break out of this paradigm or get out of this explanation of saying what plant-based eating is. If you eat a lot of fruits and vegetables and whole grains, that's still plant-based eating. It's not plant-only eating. There's a big difference between those.
And DL, I appreciate you tuning in every week, but I'm going to be honest with you about something. I'm going to ask you a question. Why do you feel the need to try to convert people? That's an honest question. I'm not putting you down, but I'm just asking you, why do you feel, why are you so strong about veganism that you feel a need to convert people? And in the age of the era of the obesity epidemic, do you believe that, we should be putting our focus just on trying to get people to eat more veggies rather than converting over to a lifestyle that's completely different from what they're eating now? Because honestly, other than the single case here or there, most of the soccer moms and dads and the people out there just it's harder for them to make that leap. It's not something that they would find easy. When I was over in Scotland, for example, I wasn't really in the big cities, and there wasn't a lot of the grocery stores were few and far between. If I was a vegan over there, I would have to, I don't know how I would function. Because, vegetables can spoil rather quickly, and, you can be like an hour and a half drive away from, you'd have to go to the store frequently. I don't know how I'd survive. So, not to ramble on, but I want to talk to you guys a little bit about plant strong eating and what that means for me. This week, me and my wife like to make bibimbap. Okay, it's a Korean dish. It has 6 different types of veggies in it, and rice, and usually we top it with avocado. So, we're eating like 7-8 veggies every night of the week with that. Last night we had stir fry with red bell pepper, yellow bell pepper. I had red, yellow, orange. I had green onions. I had white mushrooms. I think I had like 6 veggies in dinner last night alone. So that's what I mean by plant strong. I eat a wide variety of fruits and vegetables, and I usually toss in the meat for good luck. All right, Arnav, I pay more for Kirkland Signatures. Is that a protein source? I'm not really familiar with what that is. Robert,
I think it's the house brand at Costco.
Okay. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been to Costco, so I'm not certain. Mr. Monitor, do you have pizza in your icon? Seriously, dude, I am on the struggle bus with calories right now, and you're the temptress. Furniture stores go bankrupt all the time where I live. Yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, it's part of the game for some of these companies to go bankrupt and pop back up. So, Uriel, should I buy expensive used gym equipment or wait until the gym equipment websites restock? Good question. I wish I had the answer for that. We got lucky because I went on Amazon one day and decided to get a squat rack and some equipment. It was in stock, and I bought it, and the next day it was out of stock. So I don't really know what to tell you. Robert, have you tried to buy any equipment during the lockdown?
I bought a trap bar probably in January. Since then, I bought the suspension trainer, and I've talked about this on a few on here. It's super cheap, very affordable, very high quality. NOSK 17 NOSSK. It's basically a rope that climbers would use if you're trying to like scale up the side of a mountain. Plus, it's got 2 D handles on it.
Right.
We use that thing 2 to 3 times a week during our workouts. It's great for advancing bodyweight exercises. As far as actual plates and stuff like that, no, I haven't, because I've got a pretty well decked out gym already. I've been slowly adding to it over the years, ever since I really started to get into fitness and training consistently about 10 years ago. So I would say, get what you can out of the equipment you have now. And even if that's only just bodyweight exercises, get the most of that. Work on more advanced progressions. Work on increasing your training density. So how many reps you can do in a given time block. Experiment with Steve's block training. If you need help with that, either get in touch with Steve on how to set up a block training using like bodyweight exercises, or you shoot me a DM, I can help you with that too. But don't overpay for the stuff, because in a month or two's time, that the sales or the cost and all this is going to go down. So.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. You got to really look in the mirror and ask yourself, are you going to be in this home gym for the long run? Do you really enjoy it? And you have to answer honestly. When I just have a minimal home gym, honestly, I don't enjoy it because I want a few more options. To my right, I got a leg curl and a leg extension machine. I got a back extension in there so I can kind of do glute ham raises. We got a little cable system for our squat rack. That makes a world of difference having more options. And I get bored without options. So if you're going to do a home gym, you have to ask yourself, am I in it to win it? Am I going to be in this for the long run? And my gut is with Robert, wait, because we're going to wake up one day in like November or December, and the fuck bag is going to be empty because everybody's bought all the home gym equipment, and these guys are going to be desperate to sell because their sales are going to dip, and you're probably going to be able to find some really good deals. So I would probably wait.
Yeah.
Uriel, they keep selling out. Not sure what we're referencing. Probably gym equipment, but
Yeah, that was the follow-up to what he had just said.
Yeah, you really got to stay onto it, and it's like a crapshoot. You got to check 2-3 times a week, and just hope. And you might have to contact some of these websites and get on a list, because I contacted a couple of them and they told me to get on a list. So you might have to do something like that as well. Arnav, an Ironman athlete, actually got coronavirus and lost all his muscle and almost died. You hear stories like this in the media, and these are rare. These are rare, very rare cases, extremely rare. If you look at the statistical analysis of who gets coronavirus and not who gets it, who really suffers from coronavirus, anyone under 70 that isn't immunocompromised, it's a very, very rare instance, right?
Right.
We can't prevent all this from happening. But on the other hand, we do not know the intricacies that are going on in the body of individuals like this that appear healthy, right? Because a lot of us appear healthy until the next day when we wake up and we find we've had cancer in our body or we got something going on. My friend David Clark, was well over 300 pounds. He was an alcoholic. He lost over 100 pounds, and he went on to run. He became a vegan, and he went on to run 100-mile races, and he went on to become an author and a big name in the running industry. And David went in for a routine back herniation and passed away because there was something going on in his kidneys that they were not aware of. So when we hear stories like this, we have to understand logically that there might be something else going on at that moment in his body that we do not understand that facilitates someone being healthy to have a greater opportunity to get sick from something like this. Robert, do you have any thoughts on cases like this, unique cases like this?
Yeah, I would say a lot of the time the media is underreporting something. He could have had a comorbidity or an underlying condition that nobody knew about or that wasn't actually reported because they're not going to divulge that due to HIPAA. Another thing is that, endurance exercise, if he had just finished doing a lot of endurance training, too much exercise in an acute period of time can actually impair immune function. So that may have made him more susceptible to getting the infection in the first place. We don't know his initial lung capacity. Just because somebody is an Ironman athlete doesn't mean they're invincible. I mean, we've seen bodybuilders and other healthy people just drop dead from a heart attack, at a moment's notice.
Yeah, there was a story, I believe, in the late 70s about some runner that was a very well-known, a celebrity runner that died of a heart attack in his 50s. Life is complicated like that. It's not a light switch where it's black or white. One thing we have to process as well as mature, responsible adults is the reality that the media, and I hate to be one of these guys that's like the media is evil, but the media makes their money on fascinating headlines that get you to click.
Sensationalism.
Me and Robert were in the media. Me and Robert wrote articles. I was an editor in the media for 12 years. I had to fasten headlines that drew your interest in. I had good content, but if I had good content and a boring headline, you would not click to read the article. So when Robert would submit an article to me, he had no idea what the headline would be. I didn't turn it into a circus act, right? I tried to be true and authentic, but the media, these guys have cash on the line. And when there's cash on the line, they're going to do what they can to get you to click. And you might not have all the information. And I got to tell you one other thing. And I'm sorry to ramble on today and be so hyper passionate, but in the past year, I've had I've had news coverage 4 times on my run, the run for Aiden, where we ran an entire year for this paralyzed boy. I have to tell you, in each of these 4 cases, the network news, Fox and ABC, they fucked up all the facts. Like almost none of the facts were correct in the videos. And we would spend 2 hours and they would get quotes from us. And then they put the most ridiculous nonsense quote, off the cuff quote in the video. And like, it's so ridiculous how much of a meat grinder news is that you don't realize it until you've been on the news over and over again. It's to the point somebody came to me this week from the news and they wanted to do a news story on our documentary. And like I told them, dude, we're not dealing with the media anymore because they can't get the facts right. So you can turn your camera sideways and stick it straight up your candy ass. And that's basically what I told them.
Yeah. I would say Google and SEO and all of that has contributed to the downfall of reporting and news and journalism. Journalism's not even a thing anymore. It's just people are reporting what somebody else tweeted or what they heard in a rumor and an unidentified source. It's a shit show. It really is.
If you think the nightly news, and there's some good nightly news places out there, don't get me wrong, but they show up at my doorstep on 2. They film for 2 hours. It's 4 o'clock. And by 10 o'clock at night, we're on the news and all the facts are wrong because nobody can go back and watch the footage. They got this template and they're just putting together the template in a headline and it's a hot mess. And the 4 times I've been on the news, just to think how much they got wrong about me, I can't imagine what percentage is wrong every single night on the nightly news. So just know that. All right. I think it's Rant Friday. I've had way too much caffeine today, I think, Robert. Ben on Adventures, thoughts on a flexible template, keeping the exercises, total sets, and progression scheme the same, but doing them more in a checklist fashion each week versus a strict setup. Robert, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think for a seasoned lifter, like an intermediate to advanced guy, I think that program or that option could work because we've got basic movement patterns. We've got a horizontal push, we've got a vertical push, we've got a horizontal pull, we've got a vertical pull, we've got a hip hinge, and we've got the squatting pattern. So you've got all of that. You can say we can throw a lunge in there too, but that's kind of like a single leg squat. So as long as you're hitting those 6 to 7 movement patterns every week, yeah, I think you can do that. But I think if you are somebody that is not used to following a regular training program, somebody that's not used to pushing hard, or somebody that it just struggles with consistency, I think it's important that they stick to a structured, regimented program and they have some kind of lockstep kind of progression approach to it. Otherwise, if you just say, oh, well, make sure you just do this a couple of times a week to a beginner, they're going to be lost or they're not going to progress. They're not going to see results. They might be doing those 6 or 7 movement patterns, but they don't know how to push hard. They don't know how consistently they need to be doing it, how much of those movements they need to be doing it. So more experienced people that know what they're doing, they've had some success training on really structured programs, yes. New people or people that have struggled with consistency their whole life, no.
There's a lot of layers to this onion, and it's hard to peel them. But I'm going to address keeping the sets and progression and the weight and everything the same. People ask me, like, I believe Steve Reeves did his squats at the end of his full body workout. I believe, and I could be incorrect. And people ask me, it was Steve Reeves or was some old school lifter. And people ask me about this, if it's okay. And I say it can be okay. Sometimes when I do full body work, I like to do my squats at the end. But when I do them at the end, it's generally with a lighter weight and a higher rep scheme, because there's no way I could focus with heavy reps or heavy weight and normal rep scheme at the end of a workout. So if you're pretty strong, it becomes challenging to slice and dice things like this. You don't want to go into a deadlift with fatigued biceps. You don't want to go into a squat, with a fatigued lower back. Say you did RDLs before. So there's no right or wrong way to answer it. It's very complex, but at the end of the day, if you are focusing on progressive overload, you have to be really careful about doing this. It has to be really well thought out, and the compounds really have to come first in the mix. And once the compounds are done, then you can move on. The only way the compounds can't be first in the mix is if you drop the weight and do them for more reps. So that's my opinion. DL, back to veganism. Raw sports protein powder is delicious and one of the top rated for metal-free testing. I have not heard of that company. Robert, have you heard of them?
Not Raw Sport. I have tried SAM's raw protein. So I'm not sure. I don't think that's the one he's referencing, but that is another raw protein I've tried. And there's a lot of disgusting banana proteins on the market. That one was surprisingly good when I tried that several years ago. Another good plant-based protein that you might want to check out is Vegagen by Morphogen Nutrition. And the plant protein from Nutrex is really good. That's actually a really decent one that I've tried.
How does it stack up to the stuff from the Planta?
I've never tried the Ambrosia Planta stuff. I know by and large Ambrosia, and this is something I was discussing with somebody I was doing a supplement consult with earlier in the week. I believe he's one of your newer clients. We were going through something, and he's like, he had a bunch of stuff from MTS and Ambrosia. And we were kind of weeding things out, and he had the full supplement also said, man, we don't really need all this if this is just what you're looking to do and all that. And I was looking at some of the prices for the Ambrosia stuff. It's so expensive. It's more expensive than I think it should be for certain things. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I got one of their vegan protein powders, and I got to tell you, I'm not against a vegan protein powder. I really wanted to find one I could tolerate. Just as to keep an option, just to whey protein. And I haven't found one I like yet. I really haven't. And if I found one I like, I'd probably keep it around just to have every now and then.
Yeah. The issue is they all taste, they've all got that really kind of gritty, grassy-like texture. They don't have the same thick, smooth taste as whey protein does.
One thing I'm surprised with the advancement we have in vegan foods and vegetarian foods, particularly the processed foods that you can find on the shelves, is that protein powder seems to kind of have been in a holding pattern compared to where the rest of the vegan food products are going.
Yeah, they're starting to get better because we've starting to get things like coconut oil creamer and a few of these other things that companies like Compound Solutions are putting out as far as ingredients, but it's still. It's trying to make something that, is a fake plant-based burger ever going to taste as good as a hamburger made from actual ground cow? No, never.
Yeah, that makes me think of something like occasionally when people talk about veganism, they'll say, why do vegans like to have like foods that look like bacon or foods that look like cheese or whatever? And obviously there's points in having foods like this for recipes,
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have similar type of foods, or you're not trying to make a vegan hamburger or whatever, people often rip on vegans because they try to make a vegan hamburger or whatever, a vegan BLT or whatever the case is. But if you didn't try to do that, you'd just be eating the same salad every single day. I mean, let's be real.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't fault vegans for trying to fasten their food into different forms.
Yeah. It's no different than people that try to make like protein cupcakes when they bake with protein powder, or protein pudding when they're doing that. They try to make healthy treats with protein powder. It's the same thing. You're trying to make a better version or something similar to something that you're used to eating, but in a different form.
It's no different than why we have a million different workouts that accomplish the same thing. It's all personal.
Right.
If we do the same thing every day, life gets kind of stale. So sometimes it's just fun to play around and Heck, if I was a vegan, I'd want something that looked like a vegan hamburger every now and then.
Yeah, or pizza or something.
All right, what do we got here? Moving on. Guys, we're an hour in. Just to let you know, we will continue on as long as you have questions. If we miss your question, please post them up again. I'll try to calm down a little bit today. Go Tigers. LSU, yeah. Well,
yeah, buddy. Thank you, Jay.
I'm a Big Ten guy, so we'll just leave it at that.
But I mean, I like Wisconsin and Michigan. Sandy and I lived in Ann Arbor for a year back in 2015, so I like Big Blue and Wisconsin. The rest of the schools in the Big Ten can,
Yeah, Wisconsin's like, Wisconsin has mastered the art of getting into the top four of everything, and
Yep.
That's it. That's pretty much the story of Wisconsin sports, other than the Packers. Like, I think the Bucks, when I was younger, won their division like 8 out of 10 years or something like that, never won a title. So That's kind of Wisconsin. We're number two. Let's see. Jay Garcia said all these SARMs videos sound the same. Yeah, they kind of do. I don't know. I just, anybody that backsees things, you kind of got to ask themselves why.
Yeah.
Scott McErlean, Doucette is like a shark going after blood. He smelled Jeff's blood and went for it. He also highlights people on his Insta story for his followers to go after, as per recent events in Minnesota. I'm just going to leave it like this. If that's the bed you make in social media and on YouTube, somebody with that same bed is going to come along and get you. And Doucette is not squeaky clean. Doucette is cheated at powerlifting meets, which is the ultimate sin. There are so many powerlifting meets. If you are using drugs, go in a untested event. But Doucette has been busted, and this is on record. I'm not making this up. And you can decide what you want, but he's been busted at powerlifting meets for cheating. He was making money working with a steroid lab, and when he got busted, he turned on these people. And this lab closed, from my understanding. And, he was a rat, right? And if you're going to be in a dirty business, and you get caught, you need to take it like a man, or else you're a mouse. And all this stuff that Doucette runs his mouth about, if you're a liar here, you're a liar there, all this kind of stupid shit. Doucette's got a track record of fuckery. I would not personally trust him to watch my cat. That's just my opinion, and you guys can make up your own opinion, but he's going to get his day in the sun.
I just can't stand his voice. I've tried to watch a few of his videos, and it's like watching the debate he had with Dr. Mike. That was like akin to listening to nails on a chalkboard for an hour and a half.
And you know what? I was talking to Robert earlier about a new channel that is kind of bothering me. And the more I explore this channel, the more it bothers me. I'm not going to get into it right now, but this channel exploded out of nowhere behind the scenes, and it's headed to 500,000 followers. And when I look at the information, nearly every video I watch, something bothers me. And each day I want to get on YouTube and I want to talk about it, right? But I have to remind myself to stick to my message. All I can really say to you guys is there's a lot of stuff that gets put out there by guys that take their shirts off, right? And it's not all good information. It really isn't. And it's really tempting for me sometimes just to go on and comment on this stuff, but I got to hold back because I could literally do it for a living. All right, so NADPAD, I love weight training, but I know cardio is needed. Is walking for 30 minutes to an hour sufficient, or is something more intense needed? Well, let's start with this. Any activity is good activity. So that's a great thing. We live in a culture where we're sitting too much. Sitting is kind of like the new smoking. It's very bad for health, and it's very bad for your metabolism. like I have clients that are trying to lose weight that sit and sit and sit and they can't eat much. So sitting allows you to, or moving allows you to eat more, and which we all love, right? Um, is low intensity cardio the best? No. You probably want to do something each week that gets your heart rate up. With that said, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, in the long run, if all you do is lift weights, eat right, and walk each day, and you live a stress-free life, you're going to live to be like 98, right? So don't overthink this stuff. Don't overthink this stuff. Robert, any opinions?
As far as cardio, I would say, what forms or modalities do you enjoy? So somebody, I've got a background in Taekwondo, and we always did a lot of very high intensity kind of stuff, lots of jump kicks, lots of punching, lots of speed round stuff where we felt, out of breath. And I played baseball growing up too. So I kind of like that athletic stuff that makes me jumping, gets me exhausted by the end of it. So, at least once, maybe twice a week, I'll do some kind of high intensity interval training workout. Other than that, every morning, Sandy and I go for a walk, 30 to 60 minutes, depending on when she needs to get to do some work, or if I've got a consult in the morning or a meeting or something like that. Any movement is good movement. Like Steve said, the intensity and how often you do super intense workouts really kind of depends on what motivates you to exercise, what is your recovery capacity, and what is your present, body composition. Because if somebody is very, very overweight or obese, I'm not going to recommend they do box jumps and jump squats and sprints and all of that kind of stuff. Even just walking uphill will be high intensity enough for them.
Well, my default answer for anybody is to hike. And I'm a huge proponent of hiking for a number of reasons. Number one, we're out in the fresh air, we're out in nature, we're away from our phones. It's good for our minds, it's good for our souls, it's good for stress, it's good for depression, it's good for anxiety. And hiking, we are not just walking on a flat surface, right? We are walking with challenges, elevation changes, that sort of thing. You burn more calories, you can get your heart rate up just from, intervals of elevation change. So if you love to walk, I strongly recommend you turn that into find a hiking trail that's near you. And if you don't know, just pick up one of the hiking apps. There's literally, from where I live, 100 hiking trails within 40 minutes. So it's probably not too much different for you.
Yeah.
Let's see. Art Vanderlei. Stock is limited still for home gym equipment. I bought one of the last power racks available. All the plates came from Craigslist, though, and even the barbell. I'd be pretty surprised if they didn't jack up the cost of the plates on Craigslist, because I've seen some people raising the price quite a bit. I got my squat rack from my squat rack is TDS from New York Barbell, and it was only like $450, and it's rock solid quality. And some people want to go out and spend like $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 on a squat rack. You can get some really good values and some really good mid-range quality. What I have is going to last me a long, long time. So, Robert, do you have a squat rack at home, or do you have squat stands? What do you use?
We do trap bar I don't do any barbell squatting here. For my heavy leg movements, I do heavy Bulgarian split squats. So I'll start off my leg workouts with 3 to 4 sets of leg curls. So I'm ripping the tip from John Meadows, where that kind of gets my hamstrings full of blood and warms up my legs and opens my hips up a little bit more. And then I'll go into 4 sets of heavy Bulgarian split squats, where one day of the week I'll do between 6 to 8 reps, and the second day of the week will be in the 10 and 12 rep range. So my 6 to 8 rep sets right now I'm holding 65s in each hand. And that's that fourth set is a ball buster. So that's what 65. So that's 130. So it's like 260. If you're gonna equate it for sets of 6 to 8 reps right there. I've gone as high as I've held 90s in each hand for a set of 3. But I've always felt better doing single leg work compared to bilateral squatting. I'll do some goblet squats or some landmine squats at the end of the workout for like 15 to 20 reps to do a bilateral movement. But I don't use a squat rack for anything.
I just want to mentioned before we move forward, guys, we'll be on as long as you have questions. If we miss your questions, post them up again. Check out the link down below. I have a new workout out that is a 28-day cycle. If you like the strong lift, starting strength 5x5 type of programs, this is it on steroids. This is probably my best full body workout that I've ever come up with. I really like it. It cycles intensity. You can check that link out down below. DL is back with veganism. Well, okay, my answer about going plant-based is that you can live perfectly fine without harming any animals. That's true. The important thing is to get enough calories. Absolutely, I agree. The only reason I like to eat animals is because they taste good. So that's my preference. And, I will not, on this short time on Earth, I will not stop consuming things that taste good. So that's my choice, but I respect your choice.
Yeah. There's also a natural pecking order to life, and the big eat the small, and that's Darwinism at its finest. So, it's bugs and birds and things like that eat each other. So how are we different than other animals that eat other animals?
Right.
You don't see a lion going vegetarian.
Modern Stoic. I didn't bench for 4 months. I did only. Not sure what you mean. Honestly, this past year I didn't squat or bench for a few months at a time. I gave my body a break. I didn't go on social media and announce it or anything, but after like 30, 35 years of doing the heavy lifts, I decided to give my body a break and heal, and I'm back at it. I'm building my bench back up to try to get 225 by 40. That's a goal. And I'd like to do that by the time I turn 53, but I highly doubt that's possible. But I've been working up. I'm like 185. I'm working up a little bit each week. I'm 185 by 43 or whatever earlier this week. So, and deadlifts, I alternate between trap bar and hex bar deadlifts these days, but I don't have enough weight here to go above 405, so I just do a bunch of 5-rep sets, and that's pretty much all I've been doing lately. Let's see, DL. We can survive and even thrive without eating animals. Then why wouldn't we? Be careful with logical statements. Be careful with playing with logic, DL, because logic will burn you. We can survive without a car. Then why wouldn't we? Because we can survive without electricity. Why wouldn't we? All the harm that does to our environment. We can survive without plastic. Then why wouldn't we? It's a game that you can insert many things into that opening statement and say, why wouldn't we? So there are many people in this world that choose not to use plastic, that choose to reduce their carbon emissions and driving their car less. Life is very complex, and that's not always the easiest solution for everybody. I'm just going to say we got some pretty big problems in life right now. We have things that exist like human trafficking. We have things that exist like countries that can't figure out how to get water to their people. I respect, first world problems like choosing to be a vegan or choosing to do keto or choosing to do carnivore. I completely respect that. In my world, I kind of care more about just being a good person and asking myself, like, what can we do about these bigger problems in life? Because I'm choosing between a steak and a tomato, and somebody else is trying to figure out how to get water from their government, which is taking all the proceeds from these charities and building, gold dildos or whatever the fuck they're doing. And don't think they aren't doing shit like this, because they are. Let's see, Tom McGovern, wrong DL, amino acid profile, smacked my head. I'm kick DL. No, I respect DL. DL comes back every week. And look, DL is a vegan, and I'm not a vegan, and I'm not threatened by that. And, I'm just glad DL comes back, because we can have discussions, and discussions are good for everybody, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and what Tom said about the amino acid profile is that it's true that certain plant foods, like each plant food is an incomplete protein by and large. So there's certain ones that have a complete amino acid profile, like pea protein, quinoa, soy. But you can combine different, and this is what plant proteins do, plant protein powders do, is that they'll combine a bunch of different sources of plant protein. So they'll have rice, they'll have quinoa, they'll have hemp seed, they'll have pumpkin seed, and you can assemble a complete amino acid profile that's going to be similar to something like you'd see in whey or beef, but you still got certain things in plant proteins that inhibit their absorption or don't make them as bioavailable as animal proteins are. But you could still assemble a quality amino acid profile. It just you got to do a little bit more work to get it.
Yeah, the only one I kick as people that are insulting or name calling, and discussion is good for everybody, because if in this discussions with DL about veganism, one of you decides to stop eating fast food and processed food and become a vegan, then that's a victory for that person. It's not my choice, but I have friends that are vegans and I respect them. So, I mean, in this world, we try too much to divide we try to divide ourselves into tribes, and that's kind of human nature, but we have to look at the bigger picture here. And, we have to respect people for their decisions. We have to understand people are at different places, and we got bigger problems right now than trying to argue, split hairs over, somebody that's plant strong like myself or Robert and somebody that's a vegan. They can present their argument and that's fair, and I can present my argument and that's fair, as long as we don't name call. But the bigger issue here, and the one I like to rally people around, is when I go to Kroger or Walmart, I'm literally people watching going, what the fuck is going on? I mean, how are these people getting so big at such an early age? I was discussing this yesterday. I'm trying to remember who this was with. I forget. But processed food and fast food, it's like the normal, like what people eat every day now. It's just normal. It's normal. And with some of my clients, trying to get them not to eat this stuff every day is like, it's become so normal we don't even think twice about it. And that's a bigger issue for me. So, Modern Stoic, I just hit a 1-plate standing overhead press, 1 year of training, 2 plates coming bench next week. Good job. I mean, that's kind of the gold standard for me when you get 135 on the overhead press. So good job on that. And the ultimate goal for me would be to challenge you to get to 185 by 10, but, that could take a couple of years, so just pace yourself. Ben on Adventures, what's your minimum amount for exercise variety per muscle group? At the moment, I'm doing 15 per week for chest, 5 incline, 5 flat, 5 flies. So that's fine. That's a lot of compound movements for me, meaning 10 compound sets, but that's personal choice as long as you got progression in the mix. Variety, honestly, when I get past 3 sets per exercise, a lot of times I get bored. How about you, Robert?
Yeah, I'm the same thing. I've done up to 5 sets of an exercise before with certain training programs I've run. So, 5 sets of chest supported rows or flat bench or something like that. But I'm like you, I crave a little bit more variety in my training. It keeps me more engaged in the workout from a mental standpoint. Is one doing 5 sets of, is only having 3 exercises in the rotation more better than having 5 exercises in the rotation? I mean, as long as you're progressing and you've got that plan for progression in there, I think it's going to equal out to the same, as long as you're, obviously those 3 exercises are good quality movements. But I think it boils down ultimately to what is most going to keep you most engaged. Are you somebody that just likes to hammer out, a smaller amount of exercises, or are you somebody that enjoys a greater exercise variety? Sandy and I are on opposite ends of the spectrum. I prefer more variety in my workouts. If she only had to do 2 moves the entire workout, that's all she would be fine with. And so we did a block training of chest, shoulders, and triceps yesterday, and we've been doing that for the past couple of weeks now, because she really enjoys just getting in there and just beating the shit out of a muscle group for a few minutes, and then being on and then moving on to the next exercise. So there's a lot of inter-individual difference and preference that's going to go into exercise selection. But I think for three exercises, if you're doing 15 sets a week at a minimum, is probably good. I would probably go upwards to 4 or 5.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we got to consider is overworking the movement patterns as you get strong. If you're doing too much of a major compound movement, that's generally not the best idea. So we have to be aware of how it's treating our body and make adjustments if we need to.
Yeah.
A lot of it, like Robert says, highly individual. For me, 4 exercises per major muscle group is kind of where I like to be, just for variety. For shoulders, yesterday I did military press. I did hex bar upright rows, which I really like. I did side laterals, and I did a rear delt exercise. So 4 is kind of it for me. In the past, I've done like 10x3s and 8x3s, like Hepburn type of stuff, and I can do it for the short run, but it gets really, really tedious for me. And it's interesting that some of the research really shows that like 3 sets is kind of the sweet spot for progress anyway. So, all right, what do we got here? Robert Gleason, an Ironman athlete, got struck by lightning and died. This is going to sound funny and dismissive, but it's actually the truth. If you search Japan and bathtub deaths, Robert, can you search Japan and bathtub deaths? They have an epidemic over there of people slipping and falling in the bathtub. And it's like one of the craziest things I've heard. I don't know. Did you find it, Robert?
Yeah. It says Japan's health ministry is to launch an investigation into bath time fatalities, as after it was estimated that 14,000 people die every year in the tub, 3 times as many as those who die in car accidents.
14,000 people die in bathtub deaths every year in Japan. Like, I don't know why, but I'm like, how? I think the bathtub deaths in the United States are like a fourth of that or something.
Weird.
Compared to, I don't know why about what's going on with their population.
Well, it's probably because they weren't wearing a mask in the bathtub. I mean, that's why.
That's one of the oddest statistics I've ever heard, because if you consider the number of deaths they have compared to their population and look at the number of bathtub deaths in America, it's quite shocking. So,
wow.
Japan, get your act together. Art Vandalay, Ben, do you have any barbell option? I'll let those guys discuss that. Scott McEarlane, the media have reported COVID victims as being healthy when a quick Google search shows obesity. Yeah, I recall that with a couple of rap stories. There were some rappers that were listed. Normal, healthy rapper dies of COVID, and they were like 420 pounds. So,
right.
Obesity is one of the big issues when it comes to COVID-19.
Yep.
And that's not speculation. The research shows that to be true. Yes, Art and Scott are having a chat. We'll skip past that. Alvin, I read that endurance and triathletes need to keep adequate glutamine levels, otherwise they experience a drop in immune system performance. That's a very good question and something I've never heard before. Robert, have you heard anything about this?
Yeah, I think that harkens back to what we were talking about earlier when he said the Ironman athlete got COVID and lost all of his muscle mass and nearly died. And bouncing off the point that I said, that prolonged endurance is very stressful to the body and can compromise immune function. Glutamine plays a key role. It's the most abundant amino acid in the body, which is why for most people they don't need to supplement with it. But in times of severe illness or severe injury, like if you're a burn victim or if you've been impaled with an object, they start pumping people full of glutamine because it's involved with recovery and it's so abundant in the body that it's going to need to be replenished rather quickly. So glutamine improves gut function and supports immune function. I think if you are somebody that is doing a ton of endurance-based activities, or you're an Ironman athlete or a triathlete doing hours upon hours upon hours of physical activity each week, glutamine supplementation might make sense in that instance, because they've shown enough data in the studies that endurance athletes tend to suffer more from GI issues than regular athletes, or those that just engage in resistance training, and not to the extent that endurance athletes do as far as physical activity. So glutamine could, I'm not usually a big proponent of glutamine supplementation for the average person, but for top tier endurance athletes or people logging like 20, 30 hours of physical activity a week, I could agree with that.
Endurance athletes, from what I understand, endurance training or endurance athletes, you see a change in telomere length, which can be good for longevity. But you also have the short-term issues like the immune system, compromising your immune system. The longer races I've been on, and I'm talking, the trail marathons that go like 8 hours and the 12-hour runs and even my 52-hour run, you cannot adequately explain just how destroyed you are after that, because the mind can push the body to go much further than the body wants to go. That's kind of human. That's part of being human. The body can keep going. It kind of has a shutoff valve saying, stop, you're going to hurt me. But there's actually a deeper level of what we can achieve. It's kind of a self-defense mechanism, but it's not always healthy. Yeah. Let's see. Ben and Art are having a conversation. We'll let that go. Yari, hi. I do during the workout. Bench press, heavy. Cable for chest, isolation. Pull up, heavy. Lat pull down, isolation. Is it better to do heavy movements first and then lighter? Wow, that's a good question. I recall, and there was a study once, and this was a long time ago, where when you do antagonistic muscle groups together in the same workout, you actually saw an improvement in performance in both of them. Yeah. Robert, do you have any information on that? Because I recall this study being pretty old.
Yeah, that was when that was one of the big studies that people were using to tout the superiority of supersets or just alternating sets, where you do like a set of bench press, rest a minute and a half or 2 minutes, then go do a set of rows, go back to it. I forget what the technical term of reciprocal inhibition. I think that's what it is. Where you're working one group, it gives the other one time to rest, and because that side is filled with blood and it gets more of a pump, you've got a more stable base from which you can press or pull from. Yeah, I've also heard other things like I was listening to a webinar Dr. Mike was doing a couple months ago. I was listening to this last week. He actually did it a couple of months ago on the Renaissance Periodization channel. And he said, if you're doing an upper lower split and you're in your upper body workout, it makes more sense to do all of your pressing pattern movements first. Because look, you do your heavy barbell presses. Your chest, shoulders, and triceps are already warmed up. So doesn't it make sense to go and just do the rest of your chest work? And then after that, then you can do your heavy pull-ups. And then you can do your rows or your lat pull downs and do all that stuff. So you keep all that, the blood flow and the work on that one muscle group, and then you flip and then you work the other muscle groups instead of having to work on one set and then go to the other set. Now, I think that probably makes more sense for somebody that is more advanced, if somebody and has a higher degree of strength level, because for the beginner or the the intermediate that isn't moving several hundred pounds of weight on a bench press, they can probably go from pressing like 60, 70-pound dumbbells to go and do pull-ups, then jump back to that, and then go on to their isolation movements and superset those, and then be fine with it. But I think as you become a more advanced lifter, it makes sense to do all of the exercises that are working a set given movement pattern, the pressing muscles, and then move on to the pulling muscles. And then so if you're doing an upper lower split, have that first day of the week where you do your pushing exercises first, and then move on to your pulling exercises. And then for your second upper body day of the week, do all your pulling movements first, and then do your pressing exercises secondary. So that way you attack both sides of the upper body with the same intensity, but on different days. So each of them's getting worked, to a similar extent.
As many of you know, I've moved my AB splits to legs and back for an A workout, and for the B workout, it's chest, shoulders, and arms. And I like to do all my pressing movements together, and I like to do my posterior chain movements together. And it's leg and back day is not always easy. Let's establish that it's very difficult. But I find when you just do an upper lower split, upper lower is pretty arbitrary, and it makes sense to kind of try to chop the body at the halfway point. But from a pragmatic standpoint, in programming, it doesn't really work well. You're training legs twice a week. Everybody hates training legs twice a week. It's a lot of leg work, and there's more muscle groups you want to work in the upper body, and it makes it harder to get an adequate amount of volume in your upper body. So that's the way I like to slice and dice things, for better or worse. I don't think it's perfect. I think it's better in the older model. But when it comes to the point I was trying to get to here is when it comes to the upper work, I do chest, then a shoulders one day, and then on the B workout, I do shoulders and then chest. So I kind of alternate a little bit. But you're doing all pressing movements in the same workout, like Robert was talking about. Neo is from Minnesota. Neo is actually, I believe, he's a client of mine, and I believe he's about 6 blocks away or a half mile away from the George Floyd incident. So he is pretty much at ground zero in Minnesota.
Stay safe, man. Stay safe.
Yeah, Art Vanderlei had been, okay, they're having a chat ski. Let's see. All right, guys, we got about 25 minutes left, so get your questions in. We're going to roll through these so we don't miss anything. Have either of you ever done any martial arts training? Robert?
Yes, I have a black belt in Taekwondo, and I've also studied Kung Fu for 4 years. Northern Shaolin Praying Mantis Kung Fu, if we're going to be specific. So, yeah.
I have a wrestling background. I was a high school wrestler. That's really my biggest thing. I've always wanted to get involved with Kung Fu. I've studied it. At the time I became interested was 1996. I lived in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, which is the middle of nowhere. And the UFC just kind of started to get on everybody's radar back then. And I kind of took an interest in some of the martial arts. Jiu-jitsu, you would see Hoist Gracie just kicking the ass of some sumo wrestler, whatever it was back then. And that kind of interests me as a wrestler. But I really was interested in some of the more tamer kung fu disciplines. Tai Chi bored the snot out of me. But, there's other forms of Kung Fu that I like just as a discipline, as a form of exercise. But I never got into it. Maybe someday I'll have the time. Let's see. Does doing upper body exercises followed by going right into a lower body exercise and back to upper count as cardio? You don't train resistance training to count it as cardio. So just set that whole dynamic aside. Your heart rate's going to raise when you do resistance training to various degrees depending on the exercise. Robert, can you dive into a little bit of aerobic and anaerobic and what they mean? Because this isn't a concept that we talk about a lot.
Yeah, so we've got a few different ways that the body can produce energy in the body. So you've got your the creatine phosphate or the phosphagen system, which is going to run off your creatine stores in the muscle. That's for your super high intensity efforts right when you're getting going. So that's like 5 to 10 seconds worth. Then you're going to shift into the anaerobic, where that's going to continue to oxidize glucose. And then we've got our anaerobic, which involves oxygen. So anaerobic means without oxygen. And then we have aerobic, which is going to involve oxygen. It's a little bit slower energy production in the body, that's the energy system that's predominantly going to be used during lower intensity efforts, like steady state cardio, low to moderate intensity stuff. The higher intensity you get, that's when the body's going to start shifting more towards glucose metabolism and getting into the glycolytic pathways. The issue is that those only work for a short amount of time. Then the body's got to shift to the aerobic pathway, where you're starting to oxidize more fatty acids. But the issue with that is it's slower energy production, so you're going to experience a drop off in the intensity of your exercise performance there.
Yeah, so lifting is more anaerobic, and cardio is more aerobic. And anaerobic allows you to be more efficient at shorter blasts, like boom out of the gate, like
sprints, power cleans, things like that.
Yeah, exploding in football, of short explosive movements. And we need to understand kind of the difference between anaerobic and aerobic. There's certain exercises, because of the load that it places on the body. Dumbbell rows, Romanian deadlifts, and squats always leave me, breathing heavy for 2 minutes, because the taxing, how they tax my body is just intense. But they don't replace cardio. Your heart rate is elevated for a couple of minutes, but that's not the same as trying to elevate your heart rate, for 20 minutes 3 times a week, if that makes sense. Been on adventures. I'm glad early on I never got into the flashy stuff. I stick to the basic movements and focus on progression. This is something I think about a lot and something I don't talk about as much as I should. But a T Nation used to bother the living fuck out of me because every week it would be a different trainer, and I'm not being dismissive of the trainer, but the whole shtick would be to get in a new trainer with 7 different ways to train your penis, for optimal gains, new angles, and all that's good. But if you cumulatively pile all this stuff into, a funeral pile and burn it, we won't miss it. It's just there's some value in some of these exercises, right? But the flashy stuff a lot of times looks good on camera, but it's still not as effective as some of the basics. And everybody is different, right? Everybody is different and has different needs. And if you like a movement, that's great as long as it's effective. But man, are there so many exercise variations out there right now? It can get confusing. Robert, how do you process this mountain of flashiness?
I mean, I'll be honest. I fell for it hook, line, and sinker. So one of the first things I did when I started training, P90X was my gateway into kind of the resistance training world. I'm sure it was for a lot of people in the early 2000s. And so I kind of bought the thing of like, hey, I got to change my workouts every 4 weeks. And then, as I started to kind of understand it more and immerse myself into training and performance and all these things, it's a common gap. I mean, you see a headline, you see the guy's got CPT behind his name or coach this or, IFBB pro, and you realize, man, hey, they've got letters behind their name. They must know what they're talking about. And so it kind of feeds into this mental masturbation of, man, is my workout perfectly optimized to do this? And several years back, this is before you and I even had a friendship, I came across your channel and 1 or 2 other people, and it was hammering home the basics of stop changing shit up so often. Just find a core set of movements that agree with your anatomy and physiology, things that you get a really good stimulus from that don't, beat the shit out of your joints, and just work them to consistency, progress on them, get stronger on them. Keep it simple. It's not as complicated as a lot of these websites and these gurus will make you think it is. It's, especially if your goal is just to get bigger. I mean, just focus on really simple movements, stick to the basics, progress on weight sets and reps when you can, eat enough food, sleep enough, and the rest will take care of itself. But it's alluring to always be on that hunt for the next best thing or the next coolest exercise, because that will be the one thing that you need. And the supplement industry preys on people to no end. That's it. You only need this pre-workout and that'll solve all your issues. You need this fat burner, and it's such bullshit. Just you need the basics.
Well, look at Dr. Joel Seedman, okay?
That fucker.
You have a doctor. I don't know what he's a doctor of, and I'm not making light of his doctorate, but he's a strength coach, and real athletes come to him. And when I look at what I know of strength coaching, what I know of what barbell and dumbbell and basic exercises did for my athletic performance, I do not see standing on one leg with the rear leg on a ball with a band wrapped around your forehead while holding a bowling pin in your hand, is going to do more for you than these basic movements. I just don't. And not just barbell and dumbbell. We can get into kettlebell stuff and other reputable, established forms of improving strength. But all this stuff, and I don't understand the physical training, personal trainer or physical, the PT side of the obsession with all these strange exercises. I don't. Yeah. It's almost like a weird cult to me, and that's going to offend somebody. But what is the goal of the average individual? Let's establish that. The goal of the average individual that comes to me is to be a little bit stronger than they are now, to build a little bit of muscle, to feel better. And given that's the goal of 99.9% of humanity, all this stuff really has no room on the plate. Would you agree or disagree, Robert?
Yeah, I would agree with you.
All right. So, all right, Joseph, what's considered too much sodium? All right. Before Robert dives in, I just want to say that I had a friend on Facebook and they made a post and they said they were trying to cut out all sodium from their diet and they were an endurance runner. And I said, what are you doing? You're an athlete. You need sodium, especially an endurance runner. Robert, for the average individual, what's too much sodium? For the person that's going to the gym, what's too much sodium?
The current dietary recommendations put out by the U.S. government and several other world health bodies is 2,300 milligrams of sodium per day. For the active individual, that could vary greatly depending on what kind of exercise you're doing, the duration of that exercise, the environment in which you're exercising. All of that's going to factor into how much sodium your body is using per day. And what your demands are. I think at a bare minimum, humans need like 500 milligrams per day just to survive. So 2,300 milligrams as the recommendation not to exceed by the governing bodies is, over 4 times that, almost 5 times that. What I would say is that you and I covered this a couple of years ago in an article for Tiger Fitness, Steve, showing that there was most of the fear mongering or scare tactics around consuming too much sodium was a bit overblown in its relation to high blood pressure, and that they did a longitudinal study or an epidemiological study showing that people that actually had higher salt intakes, they found a relationship with lower blood pressure. Right. And then people that were on the lower end of sodium intake actually had higher blood pressure. Now, you're going to find studies to support both ends of the argument. I would say gauge it based on what your obviously, if you are a salt-sensitive individual and you have a history of high blood pressure in your family, consult with your doctor and monitor what they're doing and what they're saying as far as your sodium intake and all of that stuff, especially if you've got some kidney complications. But if you're an active, otherwise healthy individual, some sodium intake is not something about which I'm concerned. I liberally salt my food. I don't really pay attention to my sodium intake just because I know I'm active a lot. I train half the time. Sandy and I are training outside instead of training inside, especially since we've got a nice shaded area in the backyard now. So yeah, it's not something. My dad needs to watch his salt intake. He's around 1,500 milligrams, but he's been a type 2 diabetic for over 20 years and has impaired kidney function. So, but for otherwise healthy individuals, I don't see the need to be overly cautious about it.
Yeah, I've always been somebody that has loved to aggressively salt my food.
Yep. It tastes good.
And my blood pressure has always been really, really good. I mean, even when I was big, I would go get my blood pressure checked and the nurse would be like, surprised. But I've always exercised even when I was big. So take care of your body, with good exercise. And if you have high blood pressure, I don't know that you do, Joseph, but the one thing I like to tell people just from a basic health standpoint is try to look at what you're putting in your mouth: processed sugar, processed flour, fast food, processed food. Try to reduce the overall chemical and processed impact or burden on your system as a base. All right, what do we got here? Ben, on adventures. We can survive without a societal structure and live in the wild. We are, I think, right now with all the what do they call it now? Chaz, Chad, hanging Chad, chop, chip, chap, whatever the fuck they're calling it these days. Excuse me. They're not surviving without a societal structure very well. So, yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know that most people could survive in the wild these days and actually feed themselves. I don't know if you ever watched any of these reality shows where they put survivalists in the wild, but none of them can figure out how to feed themselves. It's almost comical. Robert, we haven't had the most important question yet. Is creatine safe? We haven't had a creatine question today. What is going on, people?
Creatine is not safe. I don't recommend it for anyone. It is toxic. It is a carcinogen. It will, make your eyeballs bleed out through your nostrils.
Before
Kidding.
we read this one, guys, we're about done. But if you have any questions, last minute questions, get them in now. It is the last call. 10 people a year drown in toilets. I'm actually surprised it's not higher than that, given the amount of debauchery that takes place and the amount of people that will be hugging a toilet at any given time during the weekend. So,
Right.
But I'd hate to really think about how full that toilet has to be for you to drown and what might be in that toilet. But let's not even Google that, okay? Like Elon Musk said on Joe Rogan, somebody could be eaten by a shark and it was a COVID death.
Probably so.
There's a degree of that going on, and wherever there's money, there's going to be corruption. And I hate just to drive that round peg just into the square hole that is COVID, but that's reality. Wherever there's money, there's going to be corruption. Bowtie Boy, are there any specific supplements you recommend for males in their late 30s in addition to obviously a well-balanced diet?
That's a really broad question. It kind of depends on what is your goal with supplementation? You're looking to improve body composition, performance, cognitive performance? Or are you just looking about general health? I mean, just some basics, a multivitamin never hurts just to put in there. Fish oil if you don't consume enough fatty fish during the day. Vitamin D3 if you don't get enough sunlight during the week. Joint supplement might not be a bad idea. Something with cissus or turmeric or curcumin in there, as well as Boswellia serrata could be good. Creatine, I like creatine for everybody except for those people with impaired kidney function. Obviously, creatine is good for mental, physical benefits. Caffeine, but that's almost a requisite. I don't know if that's a supplement because most people consume caffeine in some form or another each day. I think that's about it without knowing more of your circumstances and what you're looking to improve with a potential supplementation regimen.
Before we hop off, Robert, I want to do a couple of things. Let me see if I can do a screen share here.
I don't need to see any nude pics of you, Steve. Please don't.
No, you guys might be able to see who I'm subscribed to on. Let's see. You can see who I'm subscribed to over here. Joe Rogan, Greg Doucette, Ryan Humiston, James Tiny Vest, Alan Roberts. But let me get this off the screen. Just a note, guys, my ultimate 28-day power building cycle is up on my website, superlivingtoday.com. And if any of you guys need coaching, check this dude out. This guy, see all these orange little bars here. Impressive. This dude, I've been working with him for 10 weeks now. All those oranges mean a new low with every weigh-in. And he is just crushing things. If you guys are interested in coaching, hit me up on DM on Instagram. And let's try to stop the screen sharing. Robert, I appreciate you joining us. Anybody that's interested can find Robert on social media at the Supplement Engineer. You can slide into his DM on Instagram, check out his podcast, or if you want his help, with a supplement assessment, head over to my website, superlivingtoday.com. And we got a couple more questions before we exit the door. Chris, how much sleep do we really need? Wow, it's time to not being dismissive of the question, but I deal with so many people with sleep issues that how much sleep do we need? How much sleep can we function with? Robert, I'm going to let you jump in first on this.
Most health bodies and the National Sleep Foundation recommend adults get 7 to 9 hours each night of quality sleep. There's been enough research showing that sleep deprivation can increase cortisol levels, disrupt energy metabolism, impair cognitive function, impair physical performance, impair protein synthesis, impair recovery, disrupt hunger signaling in the body. So you'll feel hungrier, you'll feel less satiated at mealtime. Can also lead to insulin resistance and a whole shitload of other things that you don't really want to have to deal with. So everybody get your sleep 7 to 9 hours as much as you can.
I will say, of all the things we talk about when it comes to health, we have the obvious things like you need to, we have the obesity epidemic going on. And we tell people to eat right and we tell people to exercise, but there's not enough, in my opinion, not enough focus on sleep habits and sleep hygiene. We do not take it seriously enough. And we really, really do. So many of us have bad sleep hygiene, bad sleep habits. You need to really, I would Google sleep hygiene, sleep habits. you need to take that seriously for general health, because sleep is extremely important. If it wasn't, we wouldn't be laying pronate for 8 hours a day, 1/3 of our life. So most of us need to take sleep more seriously and listen to our body. All right, Matthew Whitaker. I've been exercising for 2 years, and I love to do a full body routine. Can I continue to make gains using a full body? Absolutely, you can. The only downside is as you get stronger, you're probably going to spend more time in the gym because you're going to have to do more warm-up sets. You might need more rest in between sets, and it can get tedious. But Matthew, as long as you like full body routines, you can continue to use them as long as you want. Robert, any thoughts?
Nope, you nailed it, Steve.
Do what you love and do it hard. Eric, is Brian from The World's Strongest Man your cousin? Yes. He's actually, we talk once a week. No, he's not. A lot of people ask if I'm related to Brian Shaw. I'm as related to Brian Shaw as I am to Greg Doucette. You know what, Robert? I'm kind of sad as we get off today.
Oh no.
We didn't talk about space or superheroes. We didn't get pulled down any rabbit trail. I will say, and I just want to see what's on your mind before we go, Robert.
Mm-hmm.
I've become infatuated with Batista. Like every Batista movie I see has been entertaining. He's like the only good thing about 2020 for me. So I'm just going to toss that out there. It doesn't matter, Stuber, or I just watched him, My Spy, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The dude is a good actor and highly entertaining. Robert, what do you do? What's your random thought for the day before we go?
My favorite Batista movie would probably be Guardians of the Galaxy, where he's Drax in that. I really enjoyed him in that role. Random thoughts of the day. Enjoy the weekend, everybody. Live a life full of compassion, understanding, and happiness. And tune in next week, same bat time, same bat channel, to see Steve's wonderfully hairy, ugly face and mine.
Yeah. I'll be 4 pounds lighter next week. All right, Robert. Thanks as always for joining me, and we'll see you guys next week.
My pleasure, Steve. Have a good one, man.
Yep. Bye now.